Good afternoon, everybody. Uh, my name is Joe Bandel, and I am the last Rosicrucian. Today, I'm going to do a very interesting topic, and it's called uh, Astral Projection, Remote Viewing, and the Galactic Federation. Now, recently, I've really been invested or interested in really coming down to exploring the mechanics and what actually is happening with astral projection, because I'm gonna I'm gonna be kind of rambling. This might sound like I'm rambling, but I am actually going to try to tie everything together. So just kind of hang in there. Give me a little space, and we'll try to do that. Back in 1991, I had probably the greatest experience of my life in crossing the great abyss and merging with Source. And after that, maybe after that, I immediately started uh, working my way back down the chakras, permanently activating one chakra after another. And the first three went very fast. You know, when I got to the heart chakra, uh, that each chakra center has its own astral body that it creates. And I'd been working with that, and I had gained the ability to, I guess what you call is mental probes. But the mental probes were actually astral projections. I didn't really think of them as astral projections because you read a book on astral projection, and what you find out is all these people are talking about, oh, the next thing you know, you're floating above your bed or floating at the foot of your bed, and you're looking down and you're seeing your body asleep on the bed or in the chair or whatever. And that never, I couldn't, it wouldn't happen. It didn't work that way. And I was like, what the heck? Because I tried a lot of times, but this mental projections, it was a breeze. I could focus on somebody and I could probe, or you send a probe out, and I could probe egregores of organizations, or I could probe people. I could probe just whatever I wanted, and it was just as easy as could be. Well, at one point, I noticed that, well, I had a couple experiences of actual astral projecting out of my body, where I could perceive my physical body and I could perceive my astral body, but there was a third me that was the observer self. And so I'm like, okay, what's really happening here? And I'm going to give two examples there. Uh, One example was I had, and we're talking 30 years ago, maybe even longer, well, longer than 30 years ago, but I'd created a large electromagnet that you'd plug in, and I'm talking large. I mean, the coils were around a wire wrapped around an iron bolt this big, and there was two of them hooked together, and it ran with pulsating DC, where I'd flip a switch, and I'd kind of put it out on the floor, and I'd lay down my feet at the South Pole end and my head at the North Pole end. I hit the switch, and there was so much current going through that it was purely unfused wire, copper wire. Well, I mean, there was okay. I did have a resistance in there, so there was a certain amount of resistance, but I did not dare keep it turned on for over 2 minutes because the coils were starting to get very warm. So you can imagine, and they'd sit there and they'd kind of chatter because it was going at 60 hertz, which is what the electrical current was going at. But I had at one point been experimenting with that, and the whole idea was to polarize my aura. And after doing one treatment like that, I was laying down on my bed just trying to meditate or just drifting off or whatever. And suddenly I rose up out of my body and I switched around to where my head was facing north like a compass needle. But it turned around and it went a little too far and then it came back and then it just kind of steadied. So I was like, whoa, this is cool because this is actual proof that I do have an astral body that's floating right above my physical body. And not only that, but it's pointing toward the north like a compass needle points toward the north because it kind of wobbled a little bit and then stabilized. So that's one experience where, uh, and I like I say, that was probably like 30 years ago, where I had an experience of the actual projecting out of the astral body. And during the same year, I had another experience where I was kind of laying on bed again, just kind of lightly meditating. I don't know what it was, but it was like each chakra center popped like a flash bulb on the old time cameras popped. It just went pop, 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 pop. And then I was floating outside my body, and there was my physical body there, that astral body there, and then me as the observer self. But I could see that the the astral body that was floating and floating away from my physical body came out of it was connected by a cord from the crown chakra, which is, if you study astral travel or astral projection, that's a helionic projection, which is the highest form of projecting possible because you're actually projecting out of the crown chakra. And that cord was like the size of a silver dollar. And I was always wondering because, okay, if you just take those two examples, especially the last one where that cord was so thick and strong and powerful, it's like obviously I can project out of my physical body and do it very strongly, but why can I not stand at the foot of my bed and look down at myself, at my body while I'm sleeping or just laying there or in a chair or something like that? And that was a mystery that kind of bugged me for years. In fact, even this past year, it still kind of bugged me. And until the point came where I finally got around to saying, I'm gonna dig into this and I'm gonna resolve it. I'm gonna find out what's really going on. So that is what this video is kind of about. It's to share what I discovered of what's really going on. And part of it came about with uh, the election that just happened, where Trump got elected. And there's so many psychics that I was looking at, psychics and astrologers and everything, and channelers, if you will, that were all going, Kamala was going to be elected the president. And their sources, their channels, this is the message that they were getting. And it's kind of like, why did so many people get it wrong? That was the question. Now, I personally, for some reason, I didn't have any doubt about the way the election was going to go, because I had a vision of a timeline that happened, and this vision happened back in 1991. And I'm going to get back to that vision because that's part of what we're talking about. But I had this vision, and every year that initial vision was way up here where only at the crown chakra could you access it. But gradually it came down lower and lower and lower and lower and lower until this year finally, where it is physically manifesting, where it is physically manifesting to a degree, and will continue to manifest. I have no doubt in my mind about it, and it virtually like unchanged. And I was like, well, what's going on? Okay, first I'm going to just kind of say, one of the risks that people take when they astral project is they are going to project where they want to be, and they are going to see what they want to see. And so a lot of these channelers, psychics, astrologers, they were going where they wanted to go. And that's why they saw what they saw. So that's an important part of it. But there's another part of it that's just as even more powerful. When I got to thinking and looking up in these books about astral projecting, some books said, hey, okay, work on the solar plexus chakra and eject astral substance from there, and you will project into that, and that's going to be your astral body that you project from. Other places said, well, you do that you project from the heart chakra. Or another place said you're going to project from the thymus, which is kind of a chakra. It's between the thyroid, it's between the throat chakra and the heart chakra. It's kind of right in the middle there. Some might have said, okay, you're projecting from the third eye chakra, and of course, the crown chakra. So, depending on who you're following or what book you're studying or things like that, these different people are going to be supposedly teaching you how to project from one type of chakra or the other. And where you go is going to be vastly different, because if you're projecting from a solar plexus chakra, you're going to end up in a totally different place than if you're projecting from the crown chakra. It makes total sense that it's going to be different. And how is it going to be different? Well, projecting from the solar plexus chakra is going to be very lifelike, very real. Probably be able to see colors and feel emotions, and Things can be almost solid, but they could also be very deceptive, as we have seen with the uh, predictions on who's going to win the election, something like that. Whereas what was frustrating to me, projecting from the crown chakra and trying to look down on things, it was very rare to get a solid image. But I finally realized, and I've just realized this in the last couple of weeks, that what I was actually seeing was the energy that surrounded an event or a person or something like that. And that what that energy what that energy really was uh, probable events. In other words, I was seeing possible futures, or possible I was seeing the probabilities. I was not seeing one thing. I was seeing all of the possible probabilities. And another thing that was very fascinating that I finally put together for myself was when I would apply myself and say, okay, here's some black negative energy surrounding this event. I'm going to try to push it away. It's like I could go with my consciousness and I could push that black energy, that dark energy, away from it. And when I was actually doing that, it was actually a very strong form of protection, because what I was actually doing was pushing away probable potential things, if you're following what I'm getting at. That's kind of, and also if I'm giving, well, and another very interesting thing that kind of ties in with this is, because I had tapped into source and because I was doing these crown chakra projections, I could channel the energy from source, and it was very powerful. But it was very powerful, and it had a very powerful catalytic effect on whatever I channeled it at. So let me talk. What's a catalytic effect? A catalytic effect is where a catalyst makes something happen. It makes a change happen. But when it's all said and done and it's over with, it separates from it and it's not a part of it. Now, in my various, both in exercises that I did, experimenting with that kind of thing, or in my relationships, what I found was my aura, my energy, the more energy that I channeled over the years, the more catalytic effect that I had on people. In other words, I stirred things up. And either I stirred things up in a bad way or I stirred things up in a good way, depending on how it kind of worked. In other words, I tend to trigger people. But really what it was I would, well, here, okay, I'll give an example with someone that was a good friend of mine and a good mentor to me for a while, but they had their health was not that good. And part of me, it's like I wanted to visit, but when I would visit, there would be a good energy exchange, but there would also be a quickening of the illness. In other words, somehow my energy speeded things up. I guess is the way it is. If they were on a self-destructive spiral, it would speed that up. But the idea was it might speed it up, but it would help to develop their soul at the expense of their physical body. And even with my wife, uh, this was kind of where I wanted to see her and be around her, even though I knew that I could only do it for short periods at a time because if I was too long, she was in a nursing home at the time. If I was around her too long, it would stir up the negativity that was in her. It would activate it because I was giving or radiating both negative and positive. By negative and positive, I'm not saying bad or good or anything like that. I'm saying more like earth or spiritual type of alternating current because that's what the crown chakra, that's what the unity is about, is alternating current. I'll give another example where people talk about sending negative energy to somebody. Well, there's so much misconceptions to that because if somebody sent negative energy to me, I would just transmute it. Yeah, yeah, and I'd be able to use it. I'd be able to make use of it. I'd turn it to a harmless type of energy that was useful. If I sent energy to them, what, and I'm not, if, and I do not send negative energy to anybody. Even if I'm in a conflict, what I do is send source energy. But if I send source energy to them, what's going to happen is they're going to be empowered. And if it hits a crack in their armor, if it hits a wound, if it hits a bad spot, it's going to go in there and it's going to activate that to bring it into awareness. So, and why is it bringing it to awareness? Because what we're looking at globally, we are looking at the shadow is erupting because the world is shifting into an alternating current circuit where the shadow needs to be purified. The shadow needs to be released. And it's going to be released through work or it's going to spontaneously erupt. Either way, that we are going into something that's just more like an alternate current type of thing. So those are things that I noticed with my energy, and as I channeled more, you'd have that attraction or repulsion would get a little stronger and a little stronger for people. So people either they're attracted to what I'm saying and they want more, or it's kind of like get rid of that guy, that kind of thing. Okay, so I just recently watched a, a, a show, a video. It was by this lady called Elizabeth April, who does remote viewing, and she's very good at her remote viewing. And this was about white hats. Now, I was really interested in, okay, this was uh, a live Zoom episode or whatever. She was doing it in front of the audience that was showing up, and I was like, I wanted to see it because, like, I wonder what she's picking up with about the white hats. This is what she was going to be researching, and I had, because I don't want to say I think of myself kind of as a white hat, but in a way I think of myself as a light worker or a love worker or whatever it is. And because I was really trying to figure out this astral projection type thing and how it works, there was a few times when I tried to psychically project or probe or connect to her. And one time, after I had made an attempt to do that, I sensed her kind of coming back and kind of checking me out a little bit. So I know that I made a connection and there was an energetic exchange. How much of that was conscious on her part or how much that I was able to sense? All I can say is that is enough to where I know it existed. So anyway, I was interested in watching and seeing her operate and see how it worked. Well, so she projected and she projected to a mountain in western United States. There was kind of like a secret bat cave or whatever you want to call it. Uh, and she was talking to these white hats, and they were supposedly the head of the white hats. And she was asking them questions and things like that. And I'm going to kind of say what she came up with. One of the things she came up with was that there was some aliens there. There were some like star seeds there, but there was actually people there. Some that actually lived in the mountain, some that just lived nearby, some that kind of worked part time or whatever. But she said there was a group of them that were computer hackers, and there was a group of them that were remote viewers, and then there was a group of them that were kind of like boots on the ground that were actually involved in one type of activity or another type of activity, and that they were largely funded by rich people, if you will. And I was like, whoa, that's totally not any place that I'm really coming from. I mean, let me, how do I say this? I'm going to say that I believe her. Well, one of the things she also said was, well, how can you get around this free will of the humanity thing and when you're not invasive? And the answer she got back was simply that all they can do, or all they do is block what the other side, uh, the powers that were, whatever, the shadow government, all they do is block them because the shadow government is doing the wrong and they're just neutralizing it. And they can't go beyond that particular thing. And I was like, well, okay, that's why they never win. That's why the white hats will never win because all they can do is just neutralize the other people. And then another thing that struck me was, well, this happened had because of the vividness with which she could do these things. It had to happen at one of the lower levels, one of the lower chakra levels, because that's kind of the rule of thumb is the lower you get the. So I'm not saying she was doing like out of the solar plexus projection, but I'm saying it could be. It would have had to been from the lower ones because it wasn't she wasn't picking up any of the kind of stuff that I pick up from the crown chakra projections that I do. But on the other hand, a lot of what she was picking up was very, uh, it seemed to be quite accurate. I had no reason to doubt a single thing of what she came up with. The thing is that other people were coming up with similar things about who was going to win the presidential election and getting it wrong because they were going to where they wanted to go, and where they wanted to go did exist as a probability someplace, if that kind of makes sense. So it's kind of, I guess I came away from that experience just kind of thinking, well, you know what? Just because you're able to project to a place like this doesn't necessarily mean that it's predictive. It could be, but it just as well could not be too. Because uh, the timeline that I have been following for 30 years never seemed to vary. But a lot of these other places seem to just jump back and forth. This here they're going to win, they're going to win, they're going to win, that kind of thing. And it's like, okay, I'm just going to go with the timeline that I had. Okay, last point that I'm coming to here, because I've kind of rambled a little bit and I'm using up my time, but the last part is talking about the Galactic Federation. And I kept wondering, okay, I get these videos or watching on the YouTube, I kind of check into some of this Galactic Federation type stuff. They're very light oriented, light based and things like that. And I was like kind of a kind of attracted to that. They felt kind of good in a way, but there was a couple issues that bothered me. One of them was they seemed to be very polarized in the sense that there's a right side and there's a wrong side. And the other thing that kind of bothered me was that they were really about the ascension of the star seeds, the ascension of humanity, and they didn't seem to care a bit about all the other life on Gaia. All right. And I is very, very, very firmly, it's like I am in a timeline where all the life on Gaia is ascending. Nothing gets left behind. Nothing gets left behind. So in a way, they're I was like energetically, they're really kind of missing the boat because on the one hand, at the lower levels, uh, they're not admitting any any of the stuff at the lower levels. They're kind of like keeping clean, if you will, and not really admitting that the lower levels even exist. And they're kind of like we're going to take the cream of the crop, take that, and that's then we're done. That's kind of the what I had. And so there was a like it just didn't work. There's uh, a distance. Couldn't really do it. Well, after trying recently, I've been trying to work on these astral projections and trying to get into the lower levels where you actually can kind of contact entities or maybe even places or something like that. So I'd been working those things, and it kind of came to me, well, okay, try contacting the Galactic Federation. So I started in the process of these projections or whatever, really trying to connect with the Galactic Federation, and actually made some contacts. I tried to start at the highest level because I was like, if there's ever going to be a good connection, it's got to be at the highest level possible. And I made some connections there. And excuse me, kind of a sneeze, half sneeze. Hope I don't get another one. Um, and what I kept trying to do is, okay, I'm going to go higher and higher and higher, as high as I can go, because the lesson that I've learned is that if you go high enough, you reach unity. If you go high enough, it it connects. You'll get that connection. And so I did. And I'm still working it, but I'm getting the connection to the Galactic Federation is getting a little stronger and a little stronger. Now, what I'm going to go back to that vision that I had of Gaia's ascension, the timeline that I had over 30 years ago. And if you look up here, I have this symbol, and this symbol is a symbol that's a seal. It's like a seal of an order or a soul group, whatever you want to call it. And the timeline that I had seen had that seal on it. It was like this portion of the timeline was ruled, or it was under the dominion or under the control of this order, this group, which in the vision, I was given the permission to say, this is my seal, this is my group, this is uh, this is the order or whatever that's taking care of this highest part of the timeline. Because the highest part of the timeline goes into the future. As it comes down, it kind of goes more like into the past, or the lower levels, that kind of thing. So there is this the highest section of the timeline that I saw in the vision had that seal. And then the section right below it had the seal of the Galactic Federation. And all these years, even though I remembered it kind of, it's like when you remember things but you never make a connection. And then all of a sudden the light bulb goes on and you go, oh, wow, okay. And that's what just happened this recently, the last few days, whatever, is I finally said, it finally occurred to me that, you dummy, the timeline that I've been following, the Galactic Federation was an important part of it. So I better get my act together, and I better start working with these people. I better start connecting to them. I better start getting uh, the corrections, because that discord that was between where I was coming from and they were coming from really was slowing things down, was really blocking Gaia's ascension. Now, that timeline also had below them, it had a human section, and below that, it actually had a section with the animals that were contributing to the Gaia's ascension. So anyway, I'm leaving this video with the message that the Galactic Federation is very important in Gaia's future timeline. And I'm going to go even further, and I'm going to say we just went through a presidential election, and that was a major turning point. The next turning point, I believe, is going to be full disclosure, where the entire world becomes aware that UFOs exist and are real, that multidimensional realities, that other alien forms of life are real, and that's going to come out by this spring. It's going to scare the bejesus out of some people, and that's the shadow government is going to bring it out to try to scare people. But the Galactic Federation, the light side, is going to be so harmonious and so good that initial fear is going to go away. And by October, we're going to be in a golden harmony type of thing, because they're going to be helping us out. They're going to be helping us, and we need the help. But initially, what's going to happen is the shock of seeing UFOs, the shock of seeing aliens and knowing that they exist and trying to wrap our head around that, is going to shake things up big time. Now, everybody, you can look at these people that are going to be the psychics and whatever. Okay, are we going to go into World War III? Are we going to do this or that? And I'm saying none of that's going to. What I have seen happening with Gaia's ascension all the way through is that the fastest, the safest, the type of path that does the least possible damage is what is happening. And instead of wars, instead of violence spreading, what's been happening is the violence has been getting to a smaller and smaller area, but becoming more extreme. That's what's going to be continuing. And the swamp, if you will, the swamp is getting kicked out. So this year is looking like, I'm going to say it, this year is looking like the year for disclosure. Try to get your head around the Galactic Federation. Try to contact them, because they're going to be part of the good guys. I'm going to leave it at that. I will say that as I've been following this timeline down, I remember when it was all the crown chakra, and then it was all the heart chakra. Then it was all the ground it to the root chakra, the earth, to the awakening of the shadow self and the purging of all the self-defeating things. Because if you look back at my posts on my normal web page, you're going to see that I was leading the pack on a lot of this stuff. And so I'm coming out and I'm saying, hey, the next biggie is disclosure of our space brothers and sisters, the Galactic Federation, and the existence of the negative variety as well. For what it's worth, hope you enjoy this. Till next time, thank you.